A pixelated astronaut stands on an obsidian launch pad, hurls a glowing ender pearl at the sky, and the camera jolts as the pearl vanishes, leaving the astronaut spinning in midair, while an offended Enderman casually walks off with the mission flag. Mission control unfolds like a redstone blueprint, solemn yet absurd, as Commander Blockwell clears his throat and taps a glass communicator nervously made of obsidian. Behind him, engineers in enchanted leather armor shuffle schematics printed on parchment and cobblestone, arguing about thrust, trajectory, and accidental creeper interference every 5 minutes. The astronaut, nicknamed Nova for reasons involving glowstone, confidence, and branding, practices somersaults that look suspiciously like lag compensation drills while clutching Ender Pearl proudly. A wall-sized projection shows the moon as a cubist-studded sphere, cratered like a poorly placed sponge block, annotated with whimsical arrows. An animated overlay highlights the Ender Pearl option in glossy text, teleportation, triage for fuel shortages, and an inconsistent understanding of physics among the crew. Commander Blockwell narrates gravely, voice echoing like a note block, "We will test Ender-assisted ascent with rigorous caution," which sounds reasonable and dangerously enthusiastic today. The briefing room fills with static electricity and particle effects. Villagers clap politely. A ghast emits a single disapproving moan. Someone drops a bucket dramatically. An engineer named Mabel, hair made of lapis ribbons, points at an absurd diagram showing trajectories like tangled string and a smiling skeleton emoji, ironically. The plan is simple on paper. Launch arc, deploy Ender Pearl, teleport near lunar surface, collect rock, return via scheduled rocket or improvised negotiation protocol. Someone in the back whispers, "What if the Pearl misfires?" And the whisper turns into a propaganda poster labeled probability, 0.2% optimistic estimate. Nova rolls her helmet with a confident smirk and says one word, "Pearl." It lands like a tagline, and the crew laughs nervously then quietly. The simulation software warps slightly when the Ender Pearl option is selected. Pixels shiver, and a loading bar labeled Hope crawls at turtle speed awkwardly. Military advisors in chainmail argue with philosophers in robes about ethics, citing rulebooks, ancient scrolls, and a surprising footnote about portals being rude and inconvenient. A hologram of the moon rotates, its craters full of tiny blocky bunnies, and someone whispers ecosystem like it's a swear word with dramatic seriousness. An Enderman consultant, clearly offended about past misunderstandings, adjusts his tie, takes the stage, and tips a hat fashioned from silk banners and clears throat. He grows alarmed at the anthropomorphized moon marketing campaign and politely demands the mission flag, which, hilariously, is glued to a villager's hat with pride. Fuel calculations appear on floating panels. Coal, lava buckets, and a suspicious line item labeled charisma with an inexplicable positive coefficient that slightly increases lift. Cutaways show archived footage of past trials, pearls teleporting into walls, astronauts redeploying coffee pots, and a goat that became honorary navigator and later piloted ships. Observers note that Ender Pearls obey no law but their own, teleporting to nearby permissible spaces and refusing to conform to linear timelines or etiquette. A slide reads risk assessment in bold. Mild inconvenience, diplomatic incident, or total accidental transdimensional relocation of cafeteria equipment, which could complicate lunch schedules significantly. An aesthetic montage shows Nova training, sprinting across end stone, practicing perfect toss arcs, and meditating beside a comforting furnace that hums softly like lullabies. The countdown begins on a giant sandstone clock, each tick accompanied by a chorus of bees for morale and comedic timing, and to mask fear. Mabel adjusts a lever labeled ethereal safety, and it releases confetti, which somehow becomes a spreadsheet explaining contingency plans in tiny font readable by parrots. An emotional slide shows family portraits. blocky parents waving, a pet wolf with a graduation cap, and a gold star labeled support very encouraging messages. Public broadcast windows show pixelated citizens watching, lighting candles, and placing tiny banners that read to the moon, "Please don't ghost us," with sincere glitter. A risk officer produces a stack of charts titled ENDER Pearl Etiquette with bullet points like avoid staring pearls, have dignity, and wear gloves ceremonially. Lighting technicians dim LEDs for dramatic effect, which causes one engineer to misplace his glasses inside a chorus of pigeons who applaud in flappy groups. Legal counsel points out an obscure clause. Ender pearl use requires informed consent or a very convincing signature by existential ink, which smells faintly heroic. A child in the crowd waves a homemade flag that reads, "Take my homework, not my math grade," and everyone laughs with crushing empathy softly. An engineer whispers to Nova, "If pearls are unpredictable, we should pack duct tape," and this becomes an unexpectedly serious debate about improvisation versus protocol. A slow-motion rehearsal shows Nova tossing a pearl time stretches, flint and steel sparkles, and the pearl winks conspiratorially as if it understands the plot perfectly. The launch team practices emergency choreography, fall dramatically, point at nearest oxygen tank, and blame the navigation software politely while maintaining professional smiles and theatrical sighs. An artist paints the mission patch, a pearl orbiting a blocky moon, stitched with comic timing, and a small, embarrassed astronaut holding a waiver ceremonially. The mood is electric, literally static crackles across maps, attracting stray sparks and an overly enthusiastic lightning rod mascot who performs motivational pep talks regularly. Someone files a complaint that the mission is culturally insensitive to Endermen and suggests a compromise. More hats, fewer staring contests to foster mutual respect. A volunteer offers to test the pearl in a simulated crater. She returns smiling, smelling faintly of moon dust and victory with an unnecessary trophy. The communications team practices saying "we choose to pearl," which sounds oddly poetic and slightly panicked when reversed in slow playback for archival purposes now. A last-minute meteorologist, wearing a sash of weather reports, predicts a 3% chance of cosmic interference and a 97% chance of awkwardness and indefinite waiting. Preparations end with a ceremonial lighting of the backup coal furnace, applause, and an exchange of nervous high-fives among astronauts and villagers before unscripted events. The camera pulls back, the launch pad gleams under moonlight filters, and Nova practices one last toss while breathing like a tiny piston with determination. Someone mutters, "What if an Enderman walks off with the flag?" And inevitably, the animation shows an Enderman casually pocketing it earlier while humming politely. Still, the crew straightens uniforms, checks pearl compartments twice, and recites a solemn mantra about responsibility, ambition, and ethically sourced teleportation devices with minimal disclaimers. Outside, the obsidian pad glints, the pearl rests in Nova's palm. The crew holds breath, debating whether this gadget is brilliant engineering or glorified improvisation, and which outcome they'll cheer, tomorrow or fear. Explosive silence cracks across a blocky command deck as Commander Steve slams a big red lever and an ender pearl glows against the glass. Every console pixel shivers, every observer mob leans forward in cubic helmets. The briefing had promised safe, swift, and spherical, and the briefing did not exactly lie. It performed a small, polite fib, the sort of fib that hums like redstone. We are at launch briefing. The world assembled, villagers in suits, a creeper with binoculars, carefully unarmed, and a scientist named Dr. Blockstrom who keeps rearranging his beard into procedural diagrams. A holomap spins above a table of obsidian. The moon is a giant pale sphere textured like wool, distant, blocky, and absurdly reachable if you squint and accept certain physics concessions. The briefing slides, projected in luminous blocks, list the usual risks. vacuum, re-entry heat, and the occasional phantom sheep, plus a new, oddly understated clause, Ender Pearl deployment efficiency. Dr. Blockstrom steps forward. All angles and cubic enthusiasm, he gestures toward an animation where an astronaut, far too square-jawed to be realistic, tosses a glittering Ender Pearl and teleports halfway to the moon. The room erupts, not into applause, which would be predictable, but into a chorus of pixelated gasps, the kind that sounds like chests opening simultaneously. Commander Steve clears his throat, a sound like gravel shuffling through a jukebox slot. He is the central character now, calm, blocky, with a helmet that reflects a dozen tiny windows of the command deck. A leader chosen because he once punched a ghast and won a staring contest with a squid. He outlines the mission in plain, deadpan phrases that make the absurd sound bureaucratic. Pearl carriers will be strapped in. Trajectories will be plotted. Pearls will be thrown. Re-entry will be negotiated. The crowd consults their pocket notebooks, tiny leather-bound inventory screens, and murmurs about conservation rates and the unsettling idea that pearls might drop like loot. A villager in the third row, whose nose is as resolute as his skepticism, raises a hand and asks the single question that has haunted every mission planning committee since the idea began. What if the pearl fails? Silence, then laughters, not cruel, just brittle like ice under a pigman's boot. Dr. Blockstrom smiles, which is to say his eyebrows rearrange into a smug trapezoid. He produces a blocky diagram. Pearl reliability curves, pearl drag coefficients, the pearl's soul-binding odds, a statistic no one enjoys admitting, and a bright red box labeled backup, emergency grappling hook. Steve squints at the chart, but mostly he watches the pearl in the projection. It arcs like a comet made of neon glass, humming with improbable intent. Flash cut, a training field with sand and armor stands. Recruits throw pearls into hoops for accuracy. One trainee, named Gina, misses horribly and ends up stuck in midair because of a misfired pearl. She hangs there, legs kicking, while two sheep stare approvingly. A short comedic beat. Gina bleats, "I think I peaked," and a parrot records it solemnly. Back in the briefing, data flows like lava from a broken pipe. Fuel savings estimated, crew morale indexed, and a scandalous chart that compares pearl-based hops to classic rocket burns with a smudged column labeled comfort level, shockingly low for pilots. An engineer whispers to Steve, "We can optimize arc angle, but pearls don't like being told what to do." There are ethical footnotes, too. Do you let a pearl choose who to bind to? What rights does a teleported instrument gain? Are pearls considered a form of assisted travel or a mobile existential crisis? The legal team, represented by a stone-faced lawyer with a nameplate that reads Miss Claus, insists on indemnity forms 3 pages long and a clause that pearls must be returned within 30 days unless marked consumed. A montage shows supplies being packed, obsidian canisters, enchanted maps, a surprising number of sandwiches labeled Moonwitch, and a crate stamped "Do not throw," which everyone instinctively throws, because that's what you do with items that are labeled that way. Cut to the simulator, a tiny blocky lunar landscape where trainees practice throwing pearls over crater rims while wearing helmets that fog up comically. Sound design note. Every throw echoes with a bell-like ping, as if the universe itself applauds daring stupidity. Steve performs one experimental throw. The pearl blinks in midair like an embarrassed stagehand, then unexpectedly splits into 2 pearls, which is not in the manual, and one of them lands in the janitor's bucket and teleports the bucket to the moon, complete with mop and a small, irate rat. The janitor, now an accidental lunar colonist, waves from a crater rim and holds up a sign made of reclaimed wood. Send cheese. That practical anomaly turns the room into a statistical problem. Everyone loves the janitor, and statistics, when they see an adorable rat on the moon, become unsteady. A developer proposes a patch. enchanted pearls that can be set to return, explode, or home, and a lab assistant whispers. Also, a do not teleport janitor charm. For all the schematics and simulations, the core question remains surprisingly human. Who's brave enough to be the first to trust a polished bit of teleportation magic with their lunch, their luggage, and their life? Steve looks around. His reflection in the glass helmet makes him twice as many people as he expected to be. He makes a decision the way a miner chooses a vein, with a mix of greed, hope, and a pragmatic shrug. Announcement. Trial launch scheduled at dusk. Spectators welcome pearls will be on display. No sheep allowed within 50 blocks for safety reasons. The crew files out under strings of lanterns. Wind sighing through pixel leaves. Camera drones hum like lazy bees, and the moon hangs low, stitched in the sky like the world's softest button. An odd hush. Even the skeletons stop rattling their bones to watch. Steve holds a pearl between thumb and forefinger. It is warm, like a sun that forgot it was supposed to be cold, and it thrums with tiny cosmic hiccups. He breathes in the blocky night air, checks his straps, and thinks of the janitor's sign. A final comedic aside. Someone hands him a sandwich, taped to an instruction manual. The sandwich is labeled for return only and contains a note that reads, if lost, feed to Moon Rat. He smiles faintly, an expression that suggests he understands the absurdity and has decided to love it anyway. As he steps to the launch pad, the world feels strangely organized, inventories checked, spells annotated, and an entire village's hopes folded into a single glimmering orb. He tosses the pearl. The world holds its breath. On the day of the launch briefing, the blocky sky over Launchpad Delta looked like someone had painted coordinates across a blue wool canvas, and Commander Steve, visor reflecting a perfect 8-bit crescent moon, stared down at a tray of Ender pearls like they were a last-minute fuel gauge. The room smelled like polished oak planks and molten iron, a reassuring Minecraft smell. And yet everyone behaved like it was a national emergency slapped into a sandbox. A hush fell. This was not the usual place, the Oxcart on the rail meeting. This was the we will teleport one human being to the moon with items that randomly bend space meeting. Project lead Dr. Eisenblock cleared his throat, which sounded like a piston and a clarinet colliding. He tapped a map made of wool and glowstone. We have 30 blocks of fuel, 4 to 2 spare helmets, and approximately 17 Ender pearls, he announced. A chorus of pocket-sized notes chimed like note blocks. We will not underestimate randomness. Cut to training field. Commander Steve stood in an arena of sand and redstone, eyes narrowed behind a visor smeared with dust textures. He practiced the toss, the deadly parabolic arc that turns a pearl into a personal wormhole. Each throw glowed with purple smoke and sent a soft clack across the grass. Nearby, a coach in a lab coat, Dr. Luna, who favored ghastly tie patterns, held up a whiteboard of physics equations translated into block speak. Momentum equals mass x voxels per second. The team had converted complex astrodynamics into discrete hops and hop counts. A technician piped up, very small, as technicians are. What if the pearl sends you through a mountain? Steve smiled like someone considering Lego architectures. He spun a pearl between 2 fingers. Purple motes whispered. Then we bring a pickaxe, he said. The room laughed, a short, pixelated chuckle. This was training, humor folded into survival planning. The briefing shifted. A holographic moon, rough, cratered, rendered in Lower's stone, floated above the table. It rotated with ancient elegance, casting blocky shadows on maps printed on parchment-colored maps. Dr. Eisenblock enumerated contingencies like a bard listing spells. Primary plan: launch via rocket to low lunar orbit, then use Ender Pearl for the final transfer to surface coordinates. Secondary plan: Pearl directly from launch silo, if and only if the launch trajectory permits. Cut. Visual schematic of the rocket. It looked like a stack of bricks with a furnace at the base belching pixelated flames. Engineers in chest plate armor tapped at levers. They had converted thrust into chest beats and synchronized it with note block cues. "We need the pearl to do a clean transfer," Dr. Luna said, flicking her tie. A young intern raised a hand with a gravelly voice. "What about Endermen?" The question landed like a gravel block. 4. A beat, the room froze, an unexpected twist. Endermen had unionized. A stern letter lay on the briefing table, signed with slender purple glyphs. The complaint demanded better shade, more teleportation breaks, and a wage in obsidian. Legal had negotiated Endermen would not be teleported against their will, and any pearl used from living Endermen would require consent forms and a tiny union fee. The audience hissed with soft amusement. Steve adjusted his helmet. "So we can't just steal pearls from their pockets. Consent matters," Dr. Eisenblock said gravely. "Also, Endermen are easily offended." Another scene snap. Simulation pods hummed. Steve climbed into a capsule like an astronaut who'd also built his own house. The interior smelled faintly of wool and stew. The simulator projected 1,000,000 possible landing sites as block clusters. Each failed trial exploded into harmless confetti of tiny cubes, reminding everyone that in Minecraft, failure was both reversible and theatrical in engineer. An espresso-barded redstone savant pointed out the timing problem. Teleportation via an ender pearl had a latency. A small, existential hiccup in spacetime described by programmers as 3 heartbeats plus lag. For an orbital transfer, 3 heartbeats could mean the difference between landing on Moonregolith and materializing inside a hostile creeper forest the size of a crater. The team ran through animation loops. Steve throwing the pearl, a purple tunnel, cubic particles. Then the black and white reality of the surface. A comedic safety briefing followed like a Saturday morning cartoon, which made the safety officer's mustache twitch with indignation. "Do not throw pearls near your inventory chest," she said sharply. "Do not attempt to pearl while holding a charged creeper. Do not pearl into a too small space. And under no circumstances should you throw the pearl then look away." She demonstrated by inserting her hand into a chest and producing a sparkly obsidian cookie. "It is tempting," she admitted, "but pride goes before a pearl-short dialogue." Deadpan, "Got it?" The team chorused. "Got it." Scene shift, provisions. The cargo bay was a shrine of cubic supplies, stacks of steak, bottles of water, stacks of torches, a single lucky compass. There was also an absurd item, a portable fishing rod labeled legal loophole. Legal had insisted on it. A junior lawyer explained, "If we accidentally pearl into someone's property, the rod entitles us to a single fish as compensation." It was bureaucratic nonsense that made everyone snort next beat. Scoring risk. The mission's probability matrix looked like a colorful quilt of outcomes. Most squares were pleasant. Land on moon, plus skill, plant flag, plus prestige. Some were catastrophic, pearl into void, game over, pearl into Ender City. Diplomacy required. One square reads simply, pearl to alternate dimension where gravity favors chickens. This produced a spontaneous laugh murmur. Dr. Eisenblock tapped that square thoughtfully. Note, chickens are not a primary concern. Training intensified with a new challenge. The multi-pearl relay. No single pearl was guaranteed to put you precisely where you needed to go, but a chain of pearls, each placed on platforms at calculated intervals, could shepherd a human body like a pixelated shepherd into place. It required a relay team on both sides, launch and lunar, and perfect timing. The relays had choreography: toss, blink, regroup, toss, blink. Steve practiced the rhythm, his movements a staccato dance of desperation and grace twist. The moon's surface had a governance glitch. Whoever landed first on a moon biome automatically earned a claim post, a tiny flag, and tax rights over adjacent blocks. Colonization laws had been written by miners with a sense of humor. Dr. Luna warned, if you pearl into someone's claim post, there will be a bureaucracy. If you pearl into their house, they will politely sue you for misplacement of their bed. The team imagined a court of dirt block lawyers cut to weather. Lunar nights were colder in pixel degrees. Micrometeorites were represented by falling anvils in the simulator. That mattered because Ender pearls did not like being interrupted by falling anvils. Interim plan. Suit up with reinforcing armor and hold a block of shelter in your inventory at all times. The image was absurdly picturesque. Commander Steve, radiant visor, carrying a small cube of shelter like a talisman, another small twist. Morale boosters. There were playlists of victory songs coded into jukeboxes. There were also ceremonials, a pre-launch ritual in which the crew circled a single pearl and recited a haiku about lag. It was heartfelt and ridiculous in equal measure. As the briefing wound down, Dr. Eisenblock summarized with steady, mock-solemn cadence. We cannot remove randomness from a pearl. We can only choreograph around it. We are inventing a language between human intention and pixelated fate. He looked at Steve. Commander, you will be the first to trust an Ender pearl for the final hop. Steve felt the weight of that sentence like a block of granite in his gloves. He placed his palm on the pearl, feeling the humming. I won't be the first man on the moon, he said, voice quiet. I'll be the first who might vanish into someone else's polder. He smiled. Also, I packed a pickaxe, laughter, nervous and hopeful. The room rose in a blocky, synchronous clap, the final image of the briefing. A slow pan over the checklist. Fuel, pearls, consent forms, pickaxes, legal fishing rod, playlist, each item a tiny story of risk and absurdity. Dr. Eisenblock folded his hands. Tomorrow we launch the tower. The relay teams will be in position. The Endermen have been briefed. We are ready to request luck. A purple mote slipped from Steve's pocket and hung in the air like a punctuation mark. It glowed, steady, as if the future itself had found a shape that could be held between two fingers. The briefing dissolved into determined footsteps and the clank of armor, the kind of hush before a leap. Expectation tasted like copper and coal fade with a small, ironic thought. When your transportation is a physics-defying gemstone that doesn't care about property lines, bureaucracy becomes survival technique. The team filed out, their shadows long and squared, leaving the pearl pulsing on the map table like a heart. The camera would follow them to the launch pad, but that's for the next briefing. Under the square moon, the launch pad isn't so much a platform as it is a very determined pile of carefully placed blocks. And Commander Steve stares down at a single Ender pearl, cradled in his gloved hand like a polished, cheating conscience. The cameras, a ring of redstone lamps, and a suspiciously smug villager with a clipboard, hum as if trying to remember how to be serious. This is the launch briefing, a moment where geology, physics, and player choices collide, and where the question, would the moon landing be easier with Ender pearls, stops being rhetorical and starts being dangerously practical. The pad smells faintly of smoked oak, and Dynamite the Pearl pulses a cool, purple heartbeat. Steve's visor reflects a tiny, square earth, and his mouth makes the solemn munching motion of a hero chewing on logistics. He taps his helmet once. Mission control clears its throat. The briefing begins, first beat, mission objectives. The goal sounds simple when translated into block speak. Reach the moon, place a flag, build a tiny monument that says we were here in cubic letters, then come back in one piece, if possible, with limbs still tessellated. But we also want experiments. Dr. Ender Newton, head of teleportation studies and proprietor of a suspiciously spiky beard, wants to test pearl-assisted burns, trajectory skips, and the ethics of random repositioning. He shuffles a stack of charts, each chart a deep purple smear with arrows pointing to outcomes described as probably fine, iffy, and catastrophe. The panel of engineers, a creeper in a suit, a redstone contraption that insists on being called Reginald, and a very pragmatic skeleton with a clipboard line up to give their 2 cents worth, which in Minecraft currency includes arrows and moral certainty. Second beat. The pearls promise. Ender pearls teleport you where they land, short range and imprecise with a price. a chunk of the thrower's health, and a very dramatic purple flash. The idea is intoxicatingly simple. Skip staging points, vault. Gaps, bounce off mid-flight structures, reduce fuel consumption. Economists of the block world calculate that if each pearl saves 1 coal unit per ascent, colony budgets would jump from tense to delirious. Visionaries imagine a lunar base shaped like a giant Enderman. But scientists frown. Physics in Minecraft is a law of convenience. Even that law wrinkles its nose when you introduce instantaneous spatial rearrangements. Dr. Ender Newton points to a graph that looks suspiciously like a creeper face and says, teleportation introduces stochastic repositioning variables. Translation: teleportation is glorified luck third beat. The demo. Steve is fitted with a harness made of chainmail and optimism. The engineers set up a mock launch sequence. A stubby rocket of glazed terracotta, thrusters powered by a furnace, and a very persuasive redstone clock. Steve practices throwing pearls at targets painted to look like the moon. A woolen sphere suspended by invisible strings, wobbling as if giggling. He tosses one. The pearl streaks in a comet of violet pixels, and zap, he teleports a block to the target with the grace of a lagging internet connection. For a glorious second, the team cheers. Then Steve blinks, his feet now 6 blocks away inside a glass observation dome, and the pearl lies smugly atop the rocket like a sleeping cat. The skull-faced skeleton mutters, latency, and the creeper applauds by making the shaken face of a re-rolled dice. It's comedic, but it hints at a bigger problem. Teleportation can move you, but where you end up is often decided by whatever the universe decides to be nearby. Sometimes that's moonlike serenity, sometimes it's a pig in a tuxedo 4th beat. Safety protocols, which read like fantasy, and bureaucracy written in alternating fonts. Rule 1. Do not pearl while in mid-combustion, because boisterous engines are known to produce misaligned outcomes. Rule 2. Secure all villagers within 10 blocks of any trajectory. They tend to teleport to inconvenient places and then form committees. Rule 3, the one printed in crimson. Never, under any circumstances, pearl through a portal nexus. The training videos show a montage that is both educational and slightly harrowing. Players teleporting into the ocean, into trees, into other people's storage chests, into the bedrock ceiling of an inconvenient cavern. Funny captions appear under each mishap. The narrator says in a gravely documentary voice, teleportation is efficient, but it does not respect your plans. 5th beat. Logistics of a pearl-augmented ascent. Engineers propose a stepwise architecture. Low-altitude burns interspersed with precision pearl hops, each hop calculated to avoid dense geometry and maximize deltav savings. They draw trajectories like a dotted spaghetti pattern across the sky. Steve studies the map and frowns. His frown looks like a pixelated mountain range. The skeleton points out that pearl accuracy degrades with distance. The creeper suggests anchoring pearls to glowing lighthouses, but that requires building 12 lighthouses and 1 shrine to improbable luck. The visual gag is a database of lighthouses, each topped with an ender pearl on a pedestal, humming like seafaring fairgrounds. We're turning the atmosphere into a relay race, somebody jokes. The joke lands like an iron ingot 6th beat. Human factors. Commander Steve is not just a block with a helmet, he's a person who throws things when under pressure. The stress of launching from blocks to orbs to infinity makes fingers twitchy. Enderpearling requires a rhythmic throw, an awareness of arc, spin, and the cruel physics of pixel lag. Training simulators show avatars flinging pearls while being serenaded by a chorus of redstone repeaters. The result is often a ballet of misplacements. The team runs a mock mission and learns the most human lesson. Hope is not a navigational instrument. Humor arises when villagers, taking the mission literally, begin offering Steve pearls wrapped in handmade bows. Steve accepts one and says, "Thanks," which sounds tiny and fragile through the comms. The villager nods solemnly, like a diplomat who has just given a king a suspiciously wrapped trinket seventh beat. Unexpected variables. The moon in Minecraft has secrets. Tall fungi, resident endermen who think moonlight is a personal spotlight, and pockets of gravel that seem designed to humiliate landers. Worse, endermen treat pearls like lost luggage. On a simulated descent, a stray enderman snatches a dropped pearl and teleports away with the grace of a critic leaving a bad play. The mission learns quickly that adding pearls to a voyage makes other mobscapes jealous and prone to interference. In one twist, a flock of phantom-like bats, enhanced by the pearl's shimmer, decide to form a temporary guild and flutter through the rocket's intake, tickling sensors. The lead engineer keeps a straight face while scribbling artisan interference on a whiteboard eighth beat. Economics and politics, because no test is purely scientific until it has bureaucrats arguing over color-coded spreadsheets. Villages lobby to keep pearls for agriculture shepherds claim pearl teleportation will revolutionize sheep moving. The kingdom argues for regulation. Anywhere pearls go, sovereignty follows. Dr. Ender Newton gives a poignant speech about technological liberation in which he waves an ender pearl like a conductor's baton. His words drift into the rafters and then back down as a small rain of glowing pixels no one asked for. The press, represented by a particularly persistent chicken with a notepad, hurls rapid questions. Are we, as a species, ready to let spontaneity decide orbital mechanics? The question is printed on a banner and sold as a souvenir ninth beat. The rehearsal goes off the rails in the best possible way. Fuel consumption drops dramatically for the first half of the ascent, confirming theories that interspersed pearl hops could reduce burnout. But then, 4 blocks from the predetermined transfer window, a pearl miscalculates and teleports Steve into the middle of a floating island, where a hermit witch has been crafting potions labeled for the curious astronaut. She hands Steve a bottle, winks, and says nothing at all. Steve takes the potion, his HUD flickers, and for a breath the world looks like it was rendered by an enthusiastic optician. Colors saturated, gravity politely asking for directions. He pops back into the rocket, bottle in hand, and the telemetry reads a new variable labeled mystical wobble. The technicians scribble furiously 10th beat, the moral. That wobble becomes a metaphor. The briefing room hums with the kind of silence that feels like a new recipe being tried on for size. Pearls promise shortcuts, economies, and dazzling showmanship, but they also introduce improvisation into a field that prefers the predictably cubic. Commander Steve stands, holding the little purple sphere that launched 1,000 debates. He imagines the moon not as a final block to be conquered, but as a collaborator, a terrain that will respond in its own way to our cleverness. He imagines landing, planting a flag, and somewhere between the engine's roar and the pearl's hush, learning whether the hero of the story is gravity or audacity. He remembers the villager's wrapped gift and the witch's potion and the creeper's restraining handshake. Each is a reminder that technology in Minecraft tends to come with a sense of humor final beat. The countdown is written on a chalkboard like a plan and on the sky like destiny. Mission control runs through contingency scenarios. What if pearls jam? What if pearls refuse to travel to the moon because they find life on the way interesting? What if the moon, in a fit of dramatic irony, decides to pearl us back? Engineers sign forms, mobs sign petitions, and the skeleton crosses his arms for posterity. Steve places the pearl into a custom socket in his suit, which is half armor, half trust fall. He breathes. The lamps flick the